Hey, welcome back to the SBP podcast, Mobile Filmmaking. You're listening to episode 201. 201. How cool is this? Anyways, I'm your host, Susie Botello. Okay, now that we've crossed that milestone, the last episode, 200, what's next, right? Well, my guest for this episode is the chairman of San Diego Comic Fest, which obviously is in San Diego, and his name is Matt Dunford. He is the chairman of this thing, but he's also a really cool guy, and I'm going to share all of this with you in a second here. But before we do that, I wanted to share something else with you. I wanted to share that the deadline for submitting feature films, that's the regular deadline, is October 19th. So go to our website, internationalmobilefilmfestival.com. Right there on the homepage on top, you'll see links to the criteria, the rules, where to submit, and all that stuff. So if you go there, you'll see it all. It's all there. All right? So enough about that. Let's get ready to speak to our guest. And by the way, the San Diego Comic Fest is taking place on October 25th through the 27th. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. That's the preamble to a wonderful episode. Let's go and talk to Matt now. Hey, Matt, how are you? We're both in San Diego, California, home of the fish taco. How are you doing?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Susie. It's, wonderful to be here. It's a wonderful evening here in sunny San Diego. Well, it's actually a little cloudy today, but it's still a warm, perfect day here. And there's no place in the world I would rather be than San Diego.
Yeah, me too. Matt, let me introduce you a little bit to our global community of mobile filmmakers. Matt is the chairman of, as I said in the intro, but I'm going to say this in front of him. He's the chairman of San Diego Comic Fest here in San Diego, which takes place every year somewhere in San Diego. And I actually got to experience your fest, Matt, in 2020.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time. I actually was a media press person somehow. And so I got in there and I shot some video, interviewed a few people, and, it was a lot of fun. I have to admit to you that what I like most about the comic events is the people.
Oh.
To me, it's more, I know a lot of people go there for all the actual stuff that they have, that they can touch and see and look through and all that stuff. But for me, it's about the kind of people that go there. I just love it. I've always thought, the people, the first time I got to go to Comic-Con, I just talked to like every single person. It was like throwing a bag of Skittles at me and me just eating them all up.
Oh, that's really wonderful to hear because, the thing we try to aim for most is the connection with the people and the connection with the creators and the people who are making the comics, because we want it to be a friendly, intimate experience. And that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you, that you enjoyed the people there, because, there's good conventions, but we want it to be something where you're making friends and having a good time and memories that'll last a lifetime. That's really what I want to hear.
Well, that's exactly what I felt, and I feel the same way about our own film festival. It's a very unique event, and it's been claimed to be an intimate experience, and that's what it's all about. It's about community in that sense. So, Matt, tell me a little bit about the journey that brought you from we could go back to birth to becoming such a passionate chairman and someone who's so involved with the comic industry here in San Diego and this particular event?
Well, it's just a thing. It's just comics have always been a passion of mine ever since I could, really remember. I learned to read off of comics when I was a young boy. I actually started my first comic book journey. I was kind of obsessed with pirates as a kid, and my favorite movie was Peter Pan. So I would watch Peter Pan over and over every single day. And my favorite toys were Lego pirates. And so I started building sets from Lego pirates, and my mom would always get me Lego pirate sets. And one day she got me a special Lego pirate set that actually had a comic book included in it. And I was absolutely blown away because all of a sudden these Lego pirates that I'm building sets with have a story behind them. It was a Captain Redbeard and the Gold Medallion. And it turns out it was actually a Belgian comic that had been taken over to the United States and kind of just translated. The translation wasn't very good, but I loved this thing. And I asked my mom and my dad to read this for me over and over every single day. And they would not stop until they eventually just taught me to read in order to get me off their back so I could enjoy this comic on my own. And I loved reading comics. And then they thought, okay, well, he's reading now. Let's get him some children's books. So they take me down the aisle to Toys R Us one day, and I see the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life, which was this holographic cover of a Spider-Man comic. And the year was 1992, so Spider-Man was celebrating his 30th anniversary, and I needed this collection of 30 Spider-Man comics that celebrated the 30th anniversary, and my dad bought it for me, and I just read those comics over and over and over again, and I could not get enough of those Spider-Man comics, and that was kind of really what hooked me on comics back in the day.
One of the things I remember when I was about 6 and 7 years old, and I grew up in Spain, but there were these books made, the Jules Verne stories, the 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Gulliver's Travels and all of those. Mm-hmm. And they were big, huge, maybe they weren't that big, but to me they seemed big. And they were hardcover books, and they had all the text on one side of the page. And you know what was on the other side of the page? All that text was turned into a comic with color illustrations. And I would read. That was my way to actually settle down somewhere and read an entire book.
That sounds wonderful that they actually did that for kids. That's just a great way to get kids reading, and more importantly, into comics. And of course, parents often say, "Oh, my children is reading these garbage comics." The word there is reading. The word there is reading. They are reading these things. They are bettering themselves, and they are learning these skills. They're seeing a visual. They're learning for imagination. They're building off of these comics, and they're going to develop an addiction to comics that will last a lifetime, and an addiction to reading, more importantly.
Yeah, that is the key. Speaking of that, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about so you learned to read through comics, right?
Yes.
And I'm imagining now that you're like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old or something like that. And what brought you into the physical world of comic events? Like, what was the first time you went and experienced that in a way that said to you, I want to be a part of that somehow?
Well, the first comic event that I really experienced was the 1994 San Diego Comic-Con. And I wasn't there to make a comic convention of my own. I remember watching Saturday morning cartoons, and I was watching the X-Men cartoon one morning, and then there was a commercial break, and they have a commercial that says, "Come down to the San Diego Comic-Con." And I said, "Hey, Dad, that looks cool. Can we go to that?" And so my dad took me and my brothers, and they piled us into the station wagon. We went from our house down to the San Diego Convention Center, and we just, we bought passes on site. We parked on site. And I was just mesmerized seeing everything in front of me at that San Diego Comic-Con. I'd never been so impressed in my entire life by anything, because all of a sudden every single one of the great things I loved was under one roof, and it was amazing. And then, I remember the first place I wanted to go was the Marvel booth when I saw the big Marvel banner in the background, and I got my first uncut sheet of trading cards, the 1994 Fleer Spider-Man, and this old guy signed it for me. And of course, I didn't know who he was. I found that sheet years later. Turns out that was Mr. John Romita Sr. Yeah, so with me being a big Spider-Man fan, I cannot believe that was my only opportunity in life, meeting John Romita Sr. And I was just dumbfounded by this later on, that I met the man who I consider the world's greatest living comic artist. But it's just that energy and that ambience and the things that I saw there at the 94 Comic-Con just absolutely just brought me into all of this. But it just was a thing of love. And then, at the end of the day, we finished up our day at Comic-Con. I had so much fun, and some guys came up to my family and I. They said, "Hey, you guys are done with your badges. Can we have them?" We give our badges away to those guys. And now all of those things aren't possible anymore. You can't go to a comic convention anymore, give away your badge. It's just unheard of.
Yeah, that's crazy. I could relate to that story of you meeting. I was at the hotel there right next to Comic-Con for a panel thing there, and I happened to be standing over there by the reception desk or whatever that's called, and this guy comes in, this older man comes over, and he walks straight to me for some reason. I'm just standing there, and I smile a lot at people. I greet people, I connect with people, and he just kind of walks straight up to me, and he says, "Hello," and I said, "Hello," and he says, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm great. How are you?" And he says, "Good," and then he walks off, and the guy at the door, there was a group of people that were with him, and the guy at the guy that opens the door at the hotel, he says, How did that feel?" And I said, "What?" And he says, "That was Stan Lee."
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." So yeah. That was pretty epic, and I didn't know. This is me. A lot of times I just don't recognize celebrities, but they're human. So, it's good.
It is. It certainly is good, because I had my fair share of encounters with Stan over the years. And I can tell you, I was pretty starstruck the first time I ever met Stan. And then it just you'd never stop getting starstruck by Stan, all of this.
Yeah, the thing for me is had I known, I'm still not sure if I would have walked up to him. I mean, just sharing space, right, with someone like that is cool enough. That happened with Dick Van Dyke at another hotel.
Oh yeah, I've met Dick Van Dyke too. He's a great guy.
Oh, Dick Van Dyke he was my idol when I was little, because I wanted a car that could fly.
Yeah, and no man in his mid-90s should have that much energy. I thought Stan was energetic. Oh, Dick Van Dyke puts him to shame.
Yeah, and I saw him at a hotel over by Universal Studios one year, but I couldn't approach him because I just felt like, well, this is good enough. I mean, this fulfills a little fantasy of mine. To be in the same place where he is at the exact same time, that's good enough for me, So you were at Comic-Con, and you were obviously just there as an attendee. You had your experience, and then after that, what happened?
Well, I kept reading comics as they go, and I continued attending San Diego Comic-Con every year since 1994, and I never really thought of a career in comics. I just went about my way, reading comics as a casual fan until it was up until the year 2009 when, I had gone down to I was a student at UC Santa Barbara at the time. So I had gone down to Los Angeles for a Pokemon card tournament just to visit some old friends, because I'm a competitive Pokemon player. I wasn't at the time. I'd been semi-retired, but I just wanted to go say hi to some friends. So after the event was concluded, I went down to I was seeing, okay, what else is going on in town? So I just checked Facebook events, and all of a sudden I see a listing for the panel for Watchmen, because the Watchmen movie was coming out. Over at Meltdown Comics, Len Wein, who was the editor for Watchmen, was actually giving a talk there. But previously, before being an editor in comics, Len Wein was, this great writer who helped. He wrote The Incredible Hulk for a while. He helped create Wolverine, and he also created Swamp Thing. So he'd been around the block as a writer for this time. So I decided, I'm just going to go down and see how Len is doing at this thing and hear this lecture. It's something way to spend the evening. But that was my first time actually hearing what a comic book editor does. And so Len Wein had talked about being a comic editor. And I always thought about being an editor as sort of being a glorified spell checker. But for this, it's just, it was amazing to hear. It's like being in the director's chair. You find a way to do things and make the story better. You help the writers, you help the artists. And for me, that sounded like the coolest job in the world. And I was absolutely blown away by all of this. And to think like, wow, this all of a sudden sounds like the coolest job in the entire world. And after the panel, I said, I said to Len, how does one become a comic editor? And he says, well, just learn so much about comics that you could be the next great comic book historian. And so I took it onto his advice, that I want to be the next great comic historian. So I started going to Comic-Con that year. The year was 2009. It was my 15th year at San Diego Comic-Con, and I wanted to go around, learn everything there was to do about comics. And there was one panel that I had jumped in on that year was the Jack Kirby tribute panel, which had one of the members there speaking that year was this gentleman by the name of Roger Friedman, who was one of the founding fathers of Comic-Con, although he credits himself as more like a founding uncle to Comic-Con. But he was there from the start of it, and he helped to put the first Comic-Con together. And he talked about his experience with Jack Kirby. He also talked about how he had been one of the invited special guests of the founding fathers that year of Comic-Con for its 40th anniversary. But he also mentioned how he had this day job at UC Santa Barbara as a physics professor. And I'm like, wait a second, I go to UC Santa Barbara. So during office hours, I would actually go up to Roger at this time and actually talk to him about the origins of San Diego Comic-Con and learning about the history of these things. And he thought I was, surprisingly, he didn't kick me out of his office hours, and he thought that I was actually, kind of a nice guy and actually took the time to talk with me. And he even, later on during my finals week, he actually invited me to participate in providing questions for a student who was graduating from UC Santa Barbara at the time with a PhD in superheroology.
That is awesome.
Yeah, which was actually classified as a theater arts degree. And from there, I got to, help develop essay questions for the student. And alongside, other, world-renowned comic historians, Scott Shaw and Mark Evanier, these guys, helped to come along with it. And then Scott was kind of like, well, who the hell is Matt Dunford on this email thread? And it was Roger who said, that's Matt Dunford, the world's youngest comic book historian. And, the thing is, I don't wear that title as often anymore. It hits harder at 23 than it does at 38.
Yeah.
Yes. So here I am, just kind of going through with my time as comic historian. But then the other thing that happened that year at the 2009 San Diego Comic-Con, like I said, they brought back the original founders of San Diego Comic-Con, who had since gone their ways, and the convention continued to grow without them. So as they were there, they said, this is great that the convention has grown so much, but it's just, remember the good old days when it was just in a small little environment? You had all this time to hang out with all these legendary creators of comic books and cartoons. Why don't we try to reinvent something like that? So they had the idea to come up with San Diego Comic Fest. And San Diego Comic Fest was brought about into an exception 3 years later in 2012. And I attended as a fan, but eventually I started volunteering with the organization to help give it, some life to it, because I felt like the people who were bringing it back, they hadn't been reading comics, so they needed something there. And I just kept helping more and more and more over the years until they said, you know what? It was Mike Towery, the founder of San Diego Comic-Con, sat me down for coffee one day, and he said, well, Matt, here's the thing. I would like to appoint you as the chairman of Comic Fest. And says,
wow.
You what? And I'm kind of struck by this because I'm still a young kid and they want me to, have the reins of the convention. And I was very much blown away by this. And I sort of reluctantly accepted, but now all of a sudden I've been passed the keys to the kingdom, and I've been the chairman.
But they had faith in you, and sometimes you have to trust people who are at that level, that if they have faith in you, there's a reason behind it, right? Mm-hmm. And that you probably could do it, and not to worry too much about it. Just do your best, right? And you did fine.
Yeah. So I've been at it for 8 years now, and right. I've been in the role since 2017, and people are saying it's like, oh, this is our favorite convention. We love this convention. It's so nice. It's so great. And you do such a good job because you never stop working on it. You never stop slowing down. And what can I say? I have fun with it.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up, so 2009 is when I launched the film festival here in San Diego, the first one. And 2012 is the year that we finally held the very first event, the very first International Mobile Film Festival event. So, the dates of all this stuff are just kind of funny. They're just popping out at me. People have faith in you sometimes. They see things you can't see for yourself. And apparently they were right, Matt. And you rocked this thing and are continuing to rock it. And I think the passion gives you the energy. It feeds the energy. And that's where you get it from. And it's kind of hard to beat that. Any other chairperson, Matt, if they don't have the passion, they wouldn't have the energy to fulfill all that you have. Yeah,
because it is, in the end, a very exhausting role of what I do. But people say it's like you go to a convention, all of a sudden you're jumping off the walls, you're having all this fun, you're doing all these things. It's like I said, it's just how I am. Yeah. I can't stop doing what I do. It's just too much fun to do what I do, and I love what I do.
Yeah, it's like, well, even talking about it, sometimes you could be sleepy and tired and exhausted, right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you start talking about this stuff and you're like, I don't know what, I didn't even drink coffee or anything. I don't know where all this energy came from, Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what would you say was like the most difficult thing that you faced when you first started it that is now probably not, I wouldn't call anything a breeze, but it's become something that's easier for you?
Well, I would say the whole thing there is just the gaining of trust among the community is the thing that definitely was the first hurdle that I did, because a lot of people had attended the first San Diego Comic Fests, and they weren't too impressed by what was going on. They said, "Oh, it's off to a rocky start," which I admit was off to a rocky start. And I think it took some time to get started, get going. It was crawling, and then it learned to take its baby steps, and it was up and walking, and now it's just running, and now it's running in a marathon. So it took a while to get going, but I had to help reinvigorate the trust of the community. And because I could go into any comic store, bookstore, card store, and like, hey, would you like some promo materials? And I could go in there and talk to all the comic fans to help them bring word of all the cool stuff that's going on at Comic Fest. And I knew there was cool stuff going on at Comic Fest. You just had to look for it. The public had to be aware of it. So I had to bring them in for it. And that was the first challenge. But, and it's still a challenge to constantly tell new people of it. But I love connecting with these people on it. And I love bringing the Comic Fest to life.
In the end, one of my biggest passions is the storytelling part. And it sounds to me like that's also a passion for you. And when you get to connect with people, and when you're at Comic-Con or ever, do you appreciate that, the storytelling that's involved in that?
Yes, because it's storytelling, it's world building, it's finding something that connects your story to someone else and makes them resonate with someone else. That's the thing I love most about comics. It's just that building of trust and that connection there, and that you can take this story and make a friendship and make a lifelong connection with someone because of this thing.
What are your thoughts about storytelling through film using smartphone cameras?
I think it actually opens a lot of doors, because, for the longest time, filmmaking was limited to only big, expensive cameras. And because of the, limitation, you had people who could not necessarily get into film, but now everybody has a phone and everyone has a camera that, can do a sufficient job. And it may not be the most highly technological thing, but nowadays you have people making TikTok videos and short clips and stuff like that. So filmmaking doesn't necessarily have to be a 2-hour film. It can be a 19-second clip. It can do something like that. I mean, I spent the other night for the San Diego Comic Fest TikTok, just like making clip after clip after clip for TikTok. And I know I have to make them 9 seconds for an entertaining fact, because people on the internet do not have a strong attention span. So I have to do it fast, make it quick, and go off of that.
Yeah, that's just video content for the most part, as opposed to narrative filmmaking. I don't know if you know this or not, but in our film festival, we have a cosplay category. Mm-hmm. So we invite people to make a movie using original cosplay costumes and things like that. So, so that's also a part of it. But here's something else you may not have heard. Just based on what you were just talking about. Have you heard about 28 Years Later? 28 Years Later, the zombie film? Yes, the sequel. You probably saw the 28 Days Later in 2002. Yeah, and now there's like 28 Weeks Later, 28 years. Yeah. 28 Years Later. Well, so that was, I think Sony was behind that, and they funded that film for $75 million. And guess what it was shot with? A cell phone. An iPhone. Yeah, an iPhone. What is your reaction to hearing that? Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me because, I mean, I think that actually does help with a perspective, considering like, oh, cool, we're doing a zombie apocalypse. Hey, look, a bunch of high-end film equipment. It's like, no, you're going to have high-end film equipment. You're going to try to document your experience with what you can find. You can find an iPhone around or something like that. And like, and I think that actually does things because, once again, it's a tool. You can use a black and white camera to make a film experience, or you can use the cell phone in your pocket to make a film experience. These are just the tools to help you along the way. And eventually it does boil down to some kind of skill that you have, because it's just going to be how it is. And I know there's all this talk of like, oh, AI is going to ruin film and art and stuff like that. I'm like, no, not really. It's going to exist, but like, it's just a tool that people are going to use. I don't think it's very good because I can see the flaws in it. I wouldn't use it myself, but we just have to learn to coexist with it. Just like with CGI or any other thing, any sort of technology is going to, make things easier for people, but it's also going to, eliminate some need for someone else. It's just how it is. And like, I don't think that anyone who actually has talent should be threatened by artificial intelligence because their talent shines through that. I think the newness of it attracts people, but I think what it comes down to is how we connect through art and storytelling. And it's different. It's something that's very human-like. And I don't see any signs of AI being able to be the human artist in that sense of the word. Not yet, anyways. So there's still hope for us humans. Now, when you and we were at Aaron Nabus's Phil-Am Creator Con. Yes. And you were holding this little thing in your hand. Oh, my little fake Emmy award. What was that about? Because they won't give me a real Emmy award. Yeah, what was that about? So for those of you who don't know me, some of you might have spotted me on this TV show called Love on the Spectrum. So I actually agreed to be on a date about like 2 years ago for this dating show for people on the autism spectrum. And I participated on it. The episode came out in like January of 2024. And suddenly when I was on it, this thing that I didn't want to talk about became this global nd1 Netflix show. And people watched it and they thought that I was adorable. And I ended up getting inadvertently nominated for 2 Emmy Awards, something for like Best Reality Television Show and Best Cast of a Reality Television Show.
So
Nice.
the show was nominated for 4 Emmy Awards, 2 of which applied to me, and I end up
Wow.
winning one of them up for Best Cast. I find out the morning after. My roommate came downstairs, and she said, "Hey, you won." What I went, you guys won the Emmy Award. What? And so I have to find out like the next morning as I'm trying to sleep on my couch during a heat wave that we had become Emmy Award winners. So ultimately, it's one of those collective awards. So I've learned that it's just the director that gets to keep the statue, and I think they like mail you up like a certificate or something later on. And I've had all these conversations with other people who've won collective Emmy Awards and collective like Pulitzers, or like, oh yeah, I have a Pulitzer, but because we're an anthology, it's just the editor who gets to keep the main one. The writers on the thing, they just get certificates. So it's like that.
It's like you're winning credits, really.
Yeah.
More than the toys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you said that you didn't want to tell anybody about that. What's that about?
The reason that I did not want to tell anyone about my time on Love on the Spectrum is because how it all came about was in 2022. I agreed to be at be a speaker at the Global Neuroscience Conference at UCSD, and I gave a talk with some teenagers who are nonverbal autistic. They're geniuses at heart, but they have to talk with computers because they can't speak themselves. They don't have the dexterity or motion to actually speak, but they're geniuses, and they talk via computers with these typing systems that they put out. And it was, a great moment. And people really liked my talk. And unbeknownst to me, I guess the producers of Love on the Spectrum had given a talk earlier that day, and they were in the audience, and they saw me, and they were like, him, get me him. And they wanted me to be on the show. So they contacted me. I was like, what? I'm like, reality television? Really? You want me to be on a reality? Like, you'd be so great on this dating show. You'd be so nice. And like, people would love you. I'm like, I don't really want to be on the show, but they just kept going and twisting my arm and like, okay, all right, I will be on this show. So I agreed to be on this show. So I take a half day off of work and I drive to Venice Beach, and they say, this girl, you'll really like her. She really likes cartoons and stuff like that. And so I go up and I talk, and I was like, hi, nice to meet you. And this girl says, hi, nice to meet you. And I knew from the first thing that she said to me, I was like, oh God, oh God, oh God. I did not know that they were going to place me on a date with another girl on the spectrum, because I thought they were going to put me on with a normal girl or something like that I was going to be the like Love on the Spectrum fixation and focal point. And so I legitimately did not know, because I've never watched the show. I still haven't seen the show to this day. And so I'm just like trying to wing it and trying to make awkward conversation, but it's just this uphill battle that you have, because if, blind dates are already awkward enough as is, and they won't let me wear my sunglasses. I've got the sun shining in my eyes. I've got a microphone under my shirt scratching up my neck. I've got 3 cameras and being jammed in my face, and I'm trying to be smooth and play it cool on this date, and it's just uncomfortable for me, and it's awkward for me because
and I think it's for anybody.
Yeah, and it's just, the thing is, no matter what I say to this girl, no matter what pickup lines I drop, no matter how charming I am, no matter how funny I am, she just doesn't budge. And I just felt, this is so cringe, and this is going to come out and everyone's going to see how weird I am. And then lo and behold, like a year later, the episode comes out, and like I've got these like thousands of girls like throwing themselves at me in my Instagram DMs, and it becomes this internet heartthrob. And it culminates with like, this Emmy Award win. Like, what in the world?
It's the thing that you were thinking about when you were playing Legos, remember? The pirates?
Yeah.
That is really cool. What episode is that, by the way, so that at least I can go and watch this?
Season 2, episode 1.
All right. Okay, everybody go watch it right now. But wait. Let's not before we end this. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You know, to be honest with you, I mean, even actors would kind of freak out on a reality thing like that because acting is completely different. You're given lines, you're practicing, you get feedback from the directors as to how to deliver your lines and all these things. So you do go in with a level of confidence. But yeah, this sounds wow. Not only did you survive this challenge, Matt, you totally rocked it. Kind of like you're chairman of the San Diego Comic Fest thing.
Yeah.
You're a champion.
I absolutely did not think that this would turn out as well as it did. I did not expect to suddenly like find myself as some like heartthrob of on the internet, that, you know, girls all of a sudden see me as this sex symbol, and that I it's just this thing is so weird. And then I have all these people coming up to me. It's like, Matt, I've been in the autism closet the entire life, my entire life. And it's like, you give me the courage to come out and tell me about myself. Or these parents talking about their spectrum children and seeing me as this role model. Like, how can I help my son? It's stuff like that comes out of it, which I think is much more important.
Yes, it is. I definitely believe that. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. And let me ask you about cosplay. I love cosplayers a lot. I mean, they've always been fascinating to me. You know, when I was little, I would dress up as stuff like any other kid, but I enjoy the eye candy, right, yes, of cosplay. But one of the things that I noticed, you know, on your photos of you with your cosplay, a lot of cosplayers kind of just put on the stuff and they believe that's it. That's all I need to do. But one of the things that I noticed about you and several other really good cosplayers is you put on the character wearing the clothes.
I don't just display it. I embody it. I put on the act. Once I'm in the costume, I'm not Matt Dunford anymore. I'm just whoever that character is. And that is just sort of a thing that kind of resonated with me, because when I sort of, you know, I never saw the appeal of cosplay. I would go to Comic Cons all the time, and I was like, you know what? I don't see the appeal of this. I mean, it's either one of two ways. Either you do this lame cosplay and no one pays attention to you, or like your costume's too cool and everyone stops you for pictures all the time. You don't have, any sort of like cool stuff that you can do, and everyone's stopping you and wasting your time at a con. But it's just like, you know what? I'm just going to go about my own way of doing this. And so there was one time at the 2010 Long Beach Comic Con. It was happening on Halloween weekend. So I figured, okay, my friends are all cosplaying because it's Halloween. You know, I'll do a costume. So I kind of throw a thing together the night before, and I did Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog. And okay, I'm just going to, do this little, I have a black suit. Here's a purple shirt. Here's a top hat with a little pirate symbol. And I'm going to do this and go in, and like, no one's going to pay attention to me and that sort of thing. I do this thing and I end up becoming like the belle of the ball at this event. And people just love the costume. They love it. And they can't get enough of me. They can't stop taking pictures. And, I was acting creepy as the Shadow Man himself. And I also found this girl who was dressed as Tiana from Princess and the Frog. And I thought that was just, the coolest thing. It was a fun time to be had. And I was like, okay, this is cool, but I'm not going to do it ever again. Over the years, I ended up finding this guy who I became friends with. He's this really big buff guy who would like dresses like Disney princesses and My Little Ponies. His name is Charlie, though he goes online by Metal Slimer. And I
love the name.
Yeah. And he is just the nicest, friendliest guy. And he just loves doing these costumes despite his very huge physique. Yeah. And one day it's just, I'm hanging out with him and he puts together this sort of closet cosplay. That's when you go into your closet and you just grab random stuff and you just look like a character. And he was dressed as John Redcorn from the cartoon King of the Hill, which I'm a huge fan of. And I'm like, hold on. So I said, Long Beach Comic Con, we're going to cosplay together. and I kind of just come up with one that I can costume with, and I decide to go as Dale Gribble. If you watch the show cartoon King of the Hill, you know Dale Gribble as he has that orange Mack truck hat, and he's a conspiracy theorist, and you know he always talks like this to Hank. It's like, no, Hank, we can't trust the government, and that's Hank's kind of thing. So, like, I just grabbed this brown shirt. I've got some pair of blue jeans, aviator glasses. I grab an orange cap and a $1 Mack truck sticker, stick the hat, and all of a sudden, I've got the outfit done. And I'm thinking, like, you know what? I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this. And I say, like, myself, should I do this? And I post a picture online. And all of a sudden on my Facebook comment, I see one comment from this particular guy who passed away last year. His name was Johnny Hardwick. He did the voice of Dale Gribble on the King of the Hill cartoon. He's like, yep, do it. And smoke Manitoba's when you do. And because he realized what I was going for. Dale's actual cartoon voice actor was the one who encouraged me to do this.
Wow.
And so, you know, I was like, you know what? If the real Dale Gribble is encouraging me to do this, I'm going to do it. So Charlie and I go to the 2014 Long Beach Comic-Con, and we do this costume. And all of a sudden, it's a hit. People are obsessed with seeing Dale and John Redcorn at this convention, and they love it. They absolutely love it. And they could not get enough of us. They could not stop taking pictures of us. The pictures started going viral on the internet. And then the next day, I get a phone call, and the phone call is it's from a number I don't recognize. And I answer the call and say, hello. He's like, hi, is this Matt Dunford? Speaking. Hi, this is Jonathan Jost, the voice of John Redcorn. I'm like, wait, what? He's like,
Whoa.
Yeah, some friends of yours sent me your picture online, and I looked you up on Facebook, and I have to say your costumes are hilarious. And oh my God, like it's not just one, but two of the voice actors of the characters are getting in touch with us to tell us how funny our stuff is. And, you know, I didn't really pay it any mind until this event started going around in town called Club Cosplay. And it's it was a nightclub that was focused on having costumes for the attendees. And the organizer had come by Little Fish Comic Book Studio and, you know, give some free passes just for helping out. And so I said, you know, let me throw together a costume. Like the movie that had generated the most attention at the time, because this was early 2016, it was The Interview with James Franco and Seth Rogen. And people kept telling me that it looked like James
that's
Franco.
right.
So I actually did a costume of James Franco's character, Dave Skylark. And people loved it at Club Cosplay. They could not get enough of me acting like Dave Skylark. And even though I didn't have a Kim Jong-un with me, they got the costume. They got the character of who I was. And then I kept going to Club Cosplay. And I would always do these things where I would just come up with a costume the night before, and people would love it. I would do Ernest from the Disney Channel movies, and people would be screaming, hey Vern, and they loved it. And you know, I got to bring out this inner energy to it. And you know, I think one of the craziest times is there was a time where I had to leave for Club Cosplay in 15 minutes and I didn't have anything to wear. So I went to my dad's closet, and my dad's a doctor, so I take a lab coat, and he had this little green bow tie that he had left over from like a St. Patrick's Day party, and I threw it together and I made Bill Nye the Science Guy. And everywhere I went at Club Cosplay, people were just chanting, Bill, 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 and they could not get enough of me. And the organizer thought that I was such a wildly entertaining entertainer, and he had this like great goal that he wanted to attract Weird Al Yankovic as a headline performer for Club Cosplay. And he thought, you know, what's the best way of that? He said to me, Matt, would you do a Weird Al cosplay? And I'm like, you know what? I never thought about that. And I'm such a huge Weird Al fan that, you know, I just go to a thrift shop, and I grab the ugliest Hawaiian shirt I can find, and I go to Target and I get some clear aviator reading glasses, and then I go to this Vietnamese wig shop for this curly wig, and I put it on and I shave my goatee. I'm like, oh my God, I'm Weird Al. And so I would go to Club Cosplay and I would sing every Weird Al song, and I would do this thing, and the people loved it. They loved the energy. They thought I was so funny and so goofy. And then Ivan started, like, the promoter, he would let me start singing Weird Al songs on stage, and people loved it. And eventually he made me the host of Club Cosplay. And like, it just ultimately culminated in that. And that was just such a wonderful time. And I still love doing these characters. I still love doing this because I mainly do it it just to make people laugh. I want to make people have a fun time with the costumes I do.
Where did this come from? The skill to do this? Did that come from? I mean, like for me, you know, I moved around in different countries and different schools and things like that, and I would go to drama classes, and I loved improv. But did you take drama classes, or
I may have taken I may have taken one or two drama classes, but I never really paid much attention or paid much mind to them. It wasn't really my thing to do. But you know, I had wanted to do this thing in my Comic-Con days. I had this dream of like being a cartoon voice actor when I'd see some voice acting panels on stage. So it's like, you know, I learned to do certain voices and do some characters and like, you know, embody the character. But the thing about, you know, just wearing the costume sort of just transforms it, because I don't see myself anymore. I'm the character. And then as soon as I see people see my costume and they start laughing, it's this urge to keep them continually laughing and to keep them entertained. So I have to embody the character and, you know, go all out with this. And it's such a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I really think that's what makes the cosplayer very special in that sense. And that's because the people connect with the character, and you're displaying the character more than just the costumes, you know? Wow. I just had so much fun just listening to that. I forgot I was hosting an episode on the podcast. So when you have your event, the San Diego Comic Fest, do you guys have, I mean, I know when I was there, you had several cosplayers. I didn't see that many. Is that something that you guys want to continue to do, or...
Well, the thing about San Diego Comic Fest is, while we, you know, cater to everyone, it's not really like cosplay forward on it. It's just, we want everyone to have a good time and to be entertained. And, you know, it's just people having a chill time with these legendary comic creators. You can meet the creators who really, you know, brought to life these stories that you've loved since you were a kid. And it's just one of those atmospheres. You know, the creators love seeing people in the costumes of characters that they created. It's just really so heartwarming to me. I mean, one of my favorite ones last year was my friend Rachel. She dressed as Vampirella, which is, you know, this, you know, which is the thing about Vampirella. It's just red dental floss. And, you know, she was doing this thing, but she went up to Trina Robbins, who's this artist and writer and great creator. She passed away earlier this year at age 85, but Trina sees her and she freaks out. She's like, "Oh my God, I created Vampirella." And she's just like meeting like this girl who's just dressed as her character that she created over 50 years ago. And she's just so like, and it was just really heartwarming for both of them. She's like, "Oh my God, I get to meet the creator of Vampirella. And it's just so awesome."
Yeah. See, it's the stories that come out of it that are just so awesome. Now, you also, I mean, you have some pretty well-known comics artists there and creators, but do you also cater to more independent, you know, brand new, you know, this is the first year I've ever created a comic and I get to come here and,
yes, because we cater to all aspects of the, you know, of comic creativity. So we also have an artist alley for artists who are creating artwork on site to help them, you know, fuel their creativity, to help build an audience, to help make friends and connections in the community. And we also have a small press area, which is for the writers and the people who are creating their own published work. And, you know, obviously for a dealer hall for people who want to sell comics and people who want to buy comics and toys and that sort of thing. But, you know, there is an introductory level into comics. People haven't made it just yet where their notoriety is there. So they can go to these conventions and they can, you know, make these connections and work with other people. Maybe they can find, if they're an artist, they can find a writer to work with, or a writer to find an artist to work with. It helps to forge those connections to help build your creativity and further you as a creator in the comics community. So like, I am very forward about the creators who are working to make a name for themselves in comics.
Yeah, and that's the place to go, to connect with each other and support one another after, right? Because all these people, maybe some of them never met each other before, and, you know, they connect there. They may become great friends, and then they go online, right, on social media and stuff, and they support each other with the likes and the comments and all that stuff as well, right? And it helps them grow in that way too, right?
Every little bit helps.
Right? I mean, it only takes one finger to give it a like. What's your Instagram?
Anyone can find me at Matt Dunford, MattDunford. I'm just Matt Dunford on everything. I'm Matt Dunford on Facebook. I'm Matt Dunford on Instagram. Matt Dunford on, like, I don't really use Twitter anymore. Matt Dunford on LinkedIn. I'm just Matt Dunford on everything.
Great. Well, I'm going to add links to your social media. I'll leave out the Twitter one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, now this event, the San Diego Comic Fest, is happening October 25th through the 27th, right?
Yes.
This month. And then where is it taking place?
It'll take place at the Westin Carlsbad. So it starts on a Friday night. So it'll start on a Friday evening. So we have this evening party on the 25th for people who have full weekend passes. You can have a little intimate preview event with some, cakes and hors d'oeuvres and refreshments with some of our legendary comic creators. And the full event will get started on the 25th and 27th. So this will be, like I said, at the Westin Carlsbad Resort. Very swanky digs right next door to Legoland. And some of this,
look at that.
Oh, yeah. So very nice venue for us to help out with.
And for you.
View. Yeah. Beautiful view of the ocean and all that. And so we have all these wonderful creators coming in. And this year we're celebrating a dual theme of two icons of comics and science fiction. We're celebrating the 100th year of Rod Serling, the creator of Twilight Zone, and the 100th year of Harvey Kurtzman, who was one of the founding fathers of Mad Magazine. So we couldn't decide whether to celebrate an icon of cartooning or an icon of science fiction. So we're going to do them both. So
that's got to be the craziest magazine in the history of magazines.
Oh yeah, you might even say it's mad, but yeah, And our guest of honor this year will be Mr. Rick Geary. So if you're a Comic-Con fan, he created the Comic-Con Toucan, and he helped, pioneer the graphic novel and Classics Illustrated. He's, this legendary, wonderful creator. We also have special guests like Jill Thompson, who created Scary Godmother and worked on the Sandman series at DC. She also worked on Wonder Woman. Writer Mark Russell, who probably writes half the comics on the shelf for comics these days, is joining us. He's worked on like Wonder Twins, Flintstones, Superman. It's like all these, insanely good creators. He's always nominated for Eisner Awards for his quality of work every single year. And I've got the creators of the X-Men 97 cartoon who, came back after doing the X-Men cartoon in the 90s. They're going to be on board. I've even got Disney, legendary Disney animator Willie Ito, who animated the spaghetti scene in Lady and the Tramp in 1954. He's 90 years old, and he's coming to Comic Fest.
Well, there you go. You can't miss it.
No.
Wow, that's awesome. And that's happening, that's in Carlsbad, you said, at the Westin?
Yes.
That's incredible. I hope I can make it. That would be my very late or very early birthday present, since my birthday's in April, so we're far away from it. Well, that's fantastic. Let me ask you this before we end this. First of all, would you like to give a shout out to some special people? Because I will give you the floor right now to give shout outs to anyone that you'd like.
Shout outs that I'd like to give a shout out to Mike Towery, the founder of San Diego Comic-Con and founder of Comic Fest, for giving me this opportunity and helping me. I'm always happy to give the opportunity to people who have furthered me in my own career. I'd like to give a shout out to Alonzo Nunez, who is president of Little Fish Comic Book Studio. Now he's president of Comic Fest, taking over from Mike. Thank you for continuing to trust me in this role through everything I do. And thank you to John Semper, who created my all-time favorite cartoon, Spider-Man the Animated Series, in 1994. He's, wonderful guy, nicest man on earth, and just absolutely wonderful. And thank you to all the, special guests that are coming out to Comic Fest this year: Rick Geary, Scott Shaw, Jill Thompson, the Burns brothers as special guests of honor in the fan category. It's like all of these people who are coming together to make this a wonderful event. I could not thank you enough for this. You all make this possible with your creativity, and I'm happy to have you in my life.
I'm going to thank and give a shout out to your parents for being such good parents that not only did they humor you, but they encouraged and inspired you. to be who you are today. So to Matt's mom and dad, thank you because you wouldn't be on the show, right?
Oh, no, I would not.
You're awesome. All right. Well, is there anything else that you think I may have missed?
No, I think that's just about it. And I think this is just, as great as can be. And thank you so much for having me on the show.
You bet. Say goodbye to our listeners.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on. Have a good night.